Hello, listeners. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever and whenever you're listening from. This is the Petty Cash Podcast. I am the host for the week, Danny, and with me, as always, are my co-hosts and friends, Joe, Charles, and Vinny. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
This is Joseph here. I'm doing all right, man.
This is Charles here. I'm doing pretty good.
Good morning, Vietnam! This is Vincent, otherwise known as VCG Cosplay. What's up, everybody?
Nice round, boys.
I figured one of us was going to do some sort of Good Morning Vietnam bit. Of course it'd be you.
It just clicked. All of a sudden it hit my head. I was like, oh, I gotta do this.
So, this is the Petty Cash Podcast. How we'll be operating this podcast is we'll be discussing a variety of topics each episode, whichever interests us the most, whichever stories we bring to the table, or if there is a breaking news topic in the world of entertainment via TV, movies, etc., we will bring it to the table and discuss what was breaking news. But for today, we have a topic on our hands, gentlemen. Today's topic is the hills that we will die on.
I won't die.
Dum dum dum.
We're all going to die after all opinions. But I believe I already know whose topic may be the best way to start us all off. So, Vinny, why don't you go ahead and start off this podcast?
My topic?
Yes, your topic.
We're doomed.
Oh my god, I forgot what my topic was. I mean, I know one of them is, fan theories kill movies so bad. That's one of my hills I will die on, is that fan theories are horrible.
Okay.
Should have a lesson this one here.
All right, so why do you believe fan theories kill movies?
Okay, so the reason for this, I guess it resonates right now with the Pixar films, because throughout the history of Pixar films, as you all know, every single film has a piece of Easter egg in every single film, which basically is just them using CG models to recreate scenes or recreate atmospheres just so they don't have to rebuild it from scratch. Perfect example of this is Toy Story 2 in the opening scene when Buzz is flying through the planet of Z, in the video game. That canyon you see is actually a Bug's Life's anthill in the canyon. Oh. They just repurposed it for that video game sequence. Now, the fans have consistently been throwing it and hammering in that all these Pixar films are connected through some multiverse. And this is where I get really frustrated because they keep trying to do all these stupid fan theories of Lightyear, the movie that's coming out that I'm very happy and very excited for. They keep trying to do these fan theories that somehow it's some delusion or some parallel universe. And I'm just like, stop with the Marvel fan theories, people. It is just a movie about Buzz. It has nothing to do with multiverse crap.
And I will say, yes, because we're all friends, we all cannot stop hearing about Lightyear from Vinny. But to his point, a lot of people think this is some sort of giant multiverse where the toys in one universe, Toy Story is a real thing and these toys are alive or they're based off real people. From my understanding, from what Vinny has told me in my own little research, it sounds like this movie is basically the movie that kid Andy would have seen growing up in the 90s.
Yes.
Now, interesting, I didn't know that about Toy Story 2, that opening, the Bug's Life Canyon. I didn't know that. That's really cool. That's a really cool piece of little trivia right there.
During the credits.
The directors like John Lasseter, Andrew Stanton, Pete Docter, they all love pointing out the little Easter eggs in the films. And that's all it is. They're just Easter eggs of reused animation pieces so they don't have to rebuild it. And so they could just take something that exists, blow it up or shrink it down, and just make it as part of the film as possible. It's why even in Monsters, Inc. you see the doll of Jesse, the Nemo before he was even made into a movie as a little squeak toy.
I mean, it's definitely an inside joke, an office joke at Pixar. And you know what, though? What I love about those animators is that they want the audience included in on it. And so whenever they have something pointing out the Easter eggs and all the fans, that's what I really love about Toy Story 2 and just everyone that works at Pixar.
It all resonates with Marvel because, everybody has these fan theories and they're fun to talk about, but when they take it too seriously and they want their fan theories to be correct or they want it to be the real thing, it's like you guys are hammering this in to the point where it's no longer fun. Just let it be what it is.
The thing about fan theories is people love to speculate. We all do. I mean, Danny, for the love of God, I'm just going to say this out there. Like, I had to hear about Spider-Man. It's like, dude, just let it happen on the screen. And then when, sorry, spoiler alert, I mean, the
movie's been out for 5 months at this point.
And he's been counting. So, but yeah, when Andrew pops out, it was awesome. It was just great. Like, that's the kind of moments that, that are building up to it. I love something like that. Of course, there's that one jerk off who probably has read something, has it in, and then would let something slip. And when it does come true, that person I hate the most.
Yes.
Like, thank you for screwing it all up,
Dude, we didn't want to know who was going to be in the movie. And that's the thing I hate, too, is so much information gets leaked, and then people start to create those theories, and it's just like, guys, can you just shut down for about 2 weeks until the movie comes out so we can actually enjoy it?
Well, and another thing too is to expand upon that is there's I think part of it is because the trailers used to be like, it seems like in the old days, the trailers would give you just little snippets of a movie and would keep a lot of the the core surprises like secret, and plus there wasn't the advent, as I'm using finger quotes here, of the the internet and social media and all that, so you wouldn't know all the things that were like happening, like, oh, who did they cast, or some little thing that they were working on, and then you go in, you see the movie, and you're like, oh my gosh, that was amazing, I didn't know this person was going to be there, or this thing was going to happen. And nowadays with the internet, it's like, they announce, oh, we're making a new Spider-Man movie, and then all of a sudden they drop word that, oh, hey, we're bringing in this person, or we're gonna do this thing, or they'll release a trailer that pretty much hits like all of the prime points of the movie, and it just ends up spoiling it, and you're like, it's so irritating. Like, imagine, if you will, like with Ghostbusters, can you imagine if we didn't know like what Ghostbusters was going to be about? Like let's say Ghostbusters Afterlife. Let's say we didn't know it was going to come out, and you go into the theater and you're just going to like watch a movie, and all of a sudden you see the trailer and you're like, wait, what is this movie? There's like a little girl here and it seems a little kind of spooky, and then all of a sudden she picks up a ghost trap. Can you imagine if we didn't know that movie was being made or whatever, and you all of a sudden see a trailer of a little girl picking up a worn out ghost trap? Can you imagine how much of a shock that would have been if we knew nothing about the movie?
Yeah, that would have been really a huge teaser.
Like, I mean, with speaking of like Ghostbusters Afterlife, oh man, we're gonna talk about this one. But, like,
Here we go.
One of like the best teaser. Like, honestly, it hit everyone by surprise. Like, there was no build up to it. It was just, here's Jason Reitman. When people said this was a teaser trailer, it started out as it, but it was kind of like almost like a teaser pitch trailer, because if there was like still a negative reaction from the last flick, this wasn't gonna fly. All you needed was that Elmer Bernstein music creeping in. We as fans knew the theme, the music that's like creeping into it, riding up to the barn. Here's a picture for everyone. Like, so shows a barn and everything, all fade to black, and here comes like this camera zooming in, the leaves blowing, and as soon as you creep up to the door of the barn, out comes, from the drapes, the Ecto-1. That, to me, that's all you needed. And speaking of like trailers and everything, it's just, I'm one of those guys that sticks to one poster, one trailer, that those random like TV spots you're gonna see, like Super Bowl and everything, and I'm good. What sucked is when I tried something like that, my first movie was Star Wars The Last Jedi. But I still do it to this day, so.
And I feel like that's like a good way to keep yourself as fresh and ready for any sort of movie as possible. And like the Ghostbusters Afterlife like teaser pitch that you were talking about, that's one of the perfect examples of showing you something that's coming, but also showing you nothing at the same time. Another good example of like teaser trailers and trailers that have come out within like the last like, I don't say 10 years. I remember the first trailers for Star Wars The Force Awakens. Those trailers gave you those tiny little nuggets, and even with that full official trailer, you still didn't know the story. You still didn't know like, why is this character here? Who is this character? Oh, there's Han Solo, but why is any of this happening? All you're seeing is just a bunch of cool shots for the movie. but yet you know nothing about the plot of the film. And I feel like that's how a lot of movie trailers should be done, is maybe you do tease the plot, but even if you don't, you still give people a taste of what the movie they're about to see in the coming months. Now with the infamous Spider-Man marketing between August and December of last year, that teaser trailer was hyped beyond any point of possible belief, and it broke the record within 24 hours for the most viewed trailer. I think it was like over 450 or 500 million times it was viewed within 24 hours.
And most of them were you.
I will admit I did contribute to watching that trailer a bit.
Even the bots were like, damn.
But jumping back on to Spider-Man, that movie from October 2020 until basically the week before it came out, that movie was leaked out to no end. The biggest thing I remember, or even the first thing probably, was it was October 2020. Jamie Foxx posted on Instagram, "Oh, I can't wait to fight Spider-Man again, and yes, I won't be blue this time." You see a picture of his blue Electro from Amazing 2, and then 3 Peters with their backs to the camera in the foreground. Are they really doing this? Imagine we see that first trailer, that first teaser, and all of a sudden, "Hello, Peter." Oh no, they're not doing this.
Didn't you contradict yourself saying I'm only one trailer?
No, you said that.
Okay.
I didn't say that.
Okay. I thought you agreed.
No. I am one of those people who kind of watches all the trailers. I may not watch all the TV spots, because even in some of those TV spots, you'll get those nuggets of like a quick second flash of a character you didn't think was going to be in this movie. Then all of a sudden, bam, they're there for 2 seconds. Oh, that's you. Okay.
And Doctor Strange were looking at you.
I'm not going to name names, but yes, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness did that recently. But yeah, trailers nowadays do give a lot away. But imagine if we didn't know anything about trailers of the movies beforehand. The movie experience would just be a lot more enjoyable and exciting that opening night you would see the film.
So, just to wrap up, the hills we will die on. My hill is just, fan theories, just taking it above and beyond. So I think we're going to pass over to Charles for his hill he will die on, and I'm assuming it's the topic we just discussed.
Well, actually, I was thinking about that one, and actually, it's kind of a combination of hill I will die on and also just something that I've noticed, if that's okay. It's kind of a little bit of a variation of a topic.
Okay.
But so with me, it's with video games and being released, and the pressure to be released too early. That is we see this so often where you'll hear about a game, you'll see a game, and you're like, oh, this is going to be so good, it's going to be so amazing, and then the pressure and the hype builds up to it, and it's a little bit also ties in with what you were talking about in terms of people come up with fan theories, and then these companies get pressured to release it, we gotta get it out, there's so much hype around this, and they release it too early, and it's got bugs and it's not complete and everything like that. And one game in particular that comes immediately to mind is Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach.
Oh yeah. I knew that was coming.
Gee, why wouldn't it? But I mean, it's a more recent game, and it proves my point. It's they released a trailer for it, and the hype started building. People started coming up with theories. Matt Pat, he always puts out theory videos on this and everything like that.
Amazing theories.
Yes, very amazing. But there was so much hype built up for it, and it was such a small team. Because if you look at the credits, you'll see that it wasn't a very big team at all, and they had very few QA working on this game. So it's really, not only were they doing something that was new to them, because they hadn't really done a 3D explorable world like that company, Steelwool. And so it really should have taken longer. It should have had more time to bake. Let the QA hammer on it more, because as you play through the game, you see plenty of things that were changed, altered, or dropped altogether because they just didn't have time to finish it up.
You know, Matt Pat was even discussing how even like My Hill I Will Die On, it ties into that because so many people were making fan theories of FNAF Security Breach. And yeah, no, because of the fan theories, because fans were actually getting the theories right, they were just kind of like, well, shit, we got to get it released. We can't just hold on to it. So that ties into what you're saying is like, it all kind of collaborates together where the production team really should just go full out, make sure it's clean and polished. Even if the fans are right, let them be right. Even Matt Pat even said that in his recent video. Like, he broke down the entire algorithm. So if you guys ever watch Matt Pat, he does talk about fan theories and how, you know, ironically, our theories or our hills that we will die on kind of coherently go together. Mm-hmm. So it's just fascinating that those actually kind of match up.
Games will get delayed and people would still hype them up and like, we want it now. Like, a big example of that was Cyberpunk 2077. That game was in development hell for what, a good decade, if not a decade and a half. And once it was finally released, the systems they were made for, the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox X or the Xbox One, they were outdated to the point where it could no longer handle those systems. But now with the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, I believe those new ports are now out for that game, and it runs a whole lot better. It ran smoothly on PC when it first came out, but because it took so long, the game sort of outlived the current technology that it was trying to be built for.
I think a perfect example would also be, Charles, you know this, Aliens Colonial Marines. Look what happened to that piece of shit. Thank you, Randy Pitchford. We didn't forget.
Just nuke it from orbit.
Like, they even fooled us at E3, and it would look, I mean, looking back at that footage, it was like, whoa, that's amazing. This is going to be the next step in everything in gaming. The game comes out. Major disappointment. So, hey, dude, yeah, we were all suckers. So, damn, just don't go back to that game. Just look at all the stuff that's on YouTube right now and everybody's frustrations.
Well, yeah, because I know exactly what you're talking about. Where basically the teasers for it look so much better than the final product. And like Security Breach had that kind of issue because it seemed more spookier and menacing, like with the initial trailers. And then when we got the actual game, it didn't have some of those moments. You know, like there were some scenes that looked like they were cut or whatever were different. And Colonial Marines again. They made it look so amazing. And then you get the game and you're just like, this isn't what we were promised. And these and I know that they love to slap that label on saying, this may not represent final product, but the thing is that lying isn't good. If you make it too grandiose, too big, you kind of paint yourself into a corner. I know you want to make the end product look good, but if you can't deliver that, don't do that. People like an amazing product. Yes, we do. But we like good products. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't put out something that, you're like, we're going to make this absolutely amazing, photorealistic, super amazing. And then you're like, oh, wait, this is going to take like freaking 20 years to like finish coding and all the stuff like that. Like, no, look at some of the more basic games that are very simple but are really nice. Like there's one game that I'm playing right now. It's called Observation, and it's the graphics look great, yeah, but it also they kept it like simpler in terms of like how you move around and interact with the world and things like that. But it wins because it presents an environment that sucks you in and makes you think, what the heck is going on? You know what I'm saying? They did, the developers could have gone like, we'll make it to where you can interact with every single little thing, blah, 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 blah. No, they scaled it back to a point where they could bring the story across, bring the environment across. And I think that's in the end, that's what people want. They don't, you don't have to promise the world. Just, come up with a good concept and deliver on it.
Another game like that where we were either promised too much or it was just they had to meet that deadline was Star Wars Battlefront 2. That game was announced maybe not even like a few months after the 2015 DICE game came out. And the 2015 game had moderate success. It probably was enough to warrant that sequel, but with how grand they were marketing that sequel, like, oh, you can play all current eras of Star Wars. Like, there's gonna be so many different heroes you can play as, so many different like skins. The stupid what's the word? The pay to win scenario with the loot boxes.
No, yeah, those things. Yeah.
And that game launched in November of 2017, but there was so much content they had to either push back or just fully get rid of because they could not meet the deadlines that were being pushed on by the publishers, EA. Now, I'm not bashing EA, I'm not bashing DICE, but I'm just trying to...
yeah, he technically is. That's all right, you can be truthful.
They got my money, they're fine. But, unfortunately, that game's live service ended as almost 2 years ago to the date, in 2020, they stopped supporting that game. But so much content was either being teased by the developers or was teased day one. Like, oh, we had General Grievous and Obi-Wan Kenobi mostly ready for launch, but we couldn't get them finished in time. And we didn't see those characters launch until like fall of 2020, where we saw the Geonosis DLC with Obi-Wan, General Grievous, and all those maps with the new game mode come out. Now, that would have been so cool to have at launch. I wouldn't have minded, like, okay, we need to delay the game so we can make it better. We were not going to give you an exact release date, but just know we need to delay it to make sure we bring all the content we have promised. I wish game companies would do that more often. Now, granted, sometimes they'll delay it for either... Like, they'll probably delay it for that specific reason, but for the most part, I feel like they should just say, delayed until further notice, until we can give you a proper update.
Who misses when games were actually completed?
Oh my gosh, yes.
I remember, like, we played the first Battlefront, and we had this little discussion, like, games would come out in the mid-2000s, and there was no DLCs, it was a complete game, and you didn't have to buy all the stuff, you would just find the cheat codes online, and you would have everything you need, like, released on that game. Like the GameCube, the Xbox, and the PlayStation 2 were perfect examples of the era where you had complete games. Like, yeah, maybe they'll release like a little DLC pack or like, hey, here's some cosmetics you can get in game with these codes, but you didn't have to pay like an extra $30 or $40, or you didn't have to wait an extra 4 to 5 months for that stuff to come out.
I was going to say, like, the last of the consoles, let's all agree, it started, I would say, roughly around... After the Xbox, the first Xbox and PS2, as soon as we got to the 360 and PS3, that's when game companies tend to got, here comes the DLCs, here comes the patches and everything, and now it becomes like, again, ironically, streaming services. Oh, we're not paying for cable anymore, but you're paying for the streaming services. Yeah. So whenever a game costs, you know, when you think about it retrospectively, $59.99, you're also sometimes paying more and more and pumping into that when you create the like grand total of the value of this game. For me, it's just the legendary buyers are those that wait until like the greatest hits comes out.
Oh yeah, like the Game of the Year version or the ultimate edition, stuff like that.
Joe, what would be your hill you die on?
Oh man, see, I came unprepared, but it's gonna come down. It's gonna come down to movies, and let's just all agree. I'm gonna say this to everyone out there listening. Aliens is fucking better than Alien. I know we were talking about it. It's just like I said, I came back from this trip and everything, and so no, like it just comes down to characters and everything, and then you have those artsy fartsy horror people that just talk about, you know, how Alien is, you know, the first is better than the sequel, but it just falls under that line where, I mean, for the sequel. I mean, roughly around in the 80s when sequels are being made, it's just you didn't know they were going to be as better as the first because there was passion, there was the whole writing, the creativity behind it, and then all the minds that were put into it. Like, honestly, like, even though starting with this, I mean, we're talking about Star Wars, the Star Wars trilogy, you know, people love Empire. You know, I have a reservation for, like in the first one just because it was the first. And, you know, without it, we can't have Empire. And that's kind of like the fallback I have.
So basically, you're saying sometimes the sequel is better than the original, like in the case of Alien versus Aliens.
Exactly. And yeah, you have people who actually do like, Godfather 2 more than Godfather 1. I like Godfather because Marlon Brando was in it. I mean, yes, with the sequel, you have Robert De Niro playing a young Vito Corleone. And, people love the duality movie that you're seeing with, him with his rise to power. And then you're also seeing Al Pacino's Michael Corleone, his kind of descent into, his criminal empire. So, yeah.
I think for me, like one of the cases is like, yeah, Empire is definitely better than the original Star Wars. But then there's the people who say like, oh, I'm including these people. I would say my favorite of the original trilogy is Return of the Jedi, mainly because that is my favorite depiction of Luke Skywalker as a character. And that's the best looking and sounding Darth Vader in my opinion. Now, granted, yes, Empire is the superior sequel. But for me, like, Jedi will always be my favorite of those three movies. Now, watching recently the first two Terminator movies, those movies are fantastic. I'm so glad I finally watched those two movies. But watching Terminator 2 Judgment Day, the first one you could almost consider it's like a sci-fi horror, kind of like with Alien and Aliens, but with Terminator 2, it is a straight up action movie, but it has those characters from the first one continued on with well-developed storylines, and then you have new characters inputted into this movie that like you start caring about, and sometimes they either like their fate is what you weren't expecting, or like, oh, that happened, I can't believe that kind of thing. But Terminator 2 is such a great iteration into that franchise.
And I read this in an article, and I mean, yeah, when you look at it, when you're watching Terminator 2, you're having new characters in it, but they're like new characters that serve a purpose to the story that they're telling. Because now, if you look at movies now, we have characters that just serve as kind of like the ha-ha factor, in it. And, when people, like, not to knock on the guy from Ant-Man, the guy who kind of recaps all... Like, that's great, that's funny. Yeah, but does he serve a purpose to the story other than being a helping hand?
The token characters. We've had this happen to us from the very beginning, including with Star Wars, because like every character, you have the main hero, you have the badass, you have the princess, you have the comedic sidekicks, you also have the villains, and this is something that a lot of us can pretty much relate to, and it's like, oh, well, they're just token characters, so we're just going to throw them in here, put them in this movie, they're going to be this, haha. Any character development? Maybe. Yes. No. We don't know. Are they going to get fucked? Probably. Who has any idea? And I will agree to you on Terminator. Like, the most amazing thing about the first Terminator is the special effects, is the way they were done way back in the day, because it's still, to this day, just phenomenal. And the one thing that makes Terminator 2 so memorable is the fact that we grew such an attachment to this version of the Terminator, not only as a human element, but the theme song was so well amped up, and just that opening credit scene of an apocalypse world on fire. Oh, baby.
Yeah, and the music composer Brad Fiedel. I mean, when you listen to the first Terminator, it's like ding, ding, ding. It's like all very, very techno, and then here comes finally with a well budget. He's actually like bring an unforgettable score. I mean, when you watch, the first Terminator, let's be honest, that's when Arnold was actually the Terminator. Oh, God. When he was actually like a mechanical boogeyman. And who was it? I was talking to someone like who would win between Michael Myers or the Terminator.
I think that was us.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that was last night. And so when we start talking about, I'm like, I don't know, man. Michael's pretty much screwed if he has a friggin' Desert Eagle pointed to his head. And let's just say that the T-800 has detailed files on the human anatomy, so he'll know. But with Terminator 2, it takes now let's look back. When you look at Terminator, how many characters can you actually successfully turn a bad guy into like the ultimate good guy? Because Vader only had 10 minutes.
I was about to say, like, yeah, Vader was probably one of like those that prime example, but yeah, thinking back like in those classic 70s, 80s, and 90s movies that we probably all grew up watching, like I can't think of many other characters that were a bad guy when they first started out, and then as that movie series went along, they finally became a good guy. I mean, Terminator and Darth Vader are probably two of the best examples of that happening. Now, granted, with Terminator 2, that was just one movie. It was like, oh, it's a different model.
It's a different
sent
model.
sent back by John Connor in T2. But with Vader, we had 3 movies of him, and we finally had the bombshell of no, I am your father, and then we saw more of that struggle in Return of the Jedi. But you see Vader as he's the bad guy in the first one, and then you get to the second one, it's like, oh yeah, he has the Emperor, his master, and then you get to Return of the Jedi, and he's still the bad guy, but then you'll get like those conversations between him and Luke that really starts like, wait, could he come back? Could he come back to the light side maybe?
It definitely builds on the mystery like of Vader. Like, you're like, wow, this is like a really, really terrifying villain. I mean, down to his Dracula-looking cape, the whole like mechanical samurai mask that he has with the breathing apparatus, and with the notion of like Darth Vader becoming good. I mean, audiences back then, it does give you that little. I mean, as soon as he announced at the very end, spoiler alert, that he's the father of Luke, and so. You had this is funny that we're trailing back to now fan theories. It's just like, whoa, what the heck, like how did the good guy's father turn bad? And when you're looking at Vader, it does give like the fan theories and speculations of there's always the one with like, hey, will Luke turn bad, or what the heck happened to Vader to make this good guy become
and
evil.
That's where we get the prequels.
Yeah.
In modern times, we've had characters like Nebula from the Guardians of the Galaxy, straight up bad guy first, then eventually becomes good guy. Then also, I guess you can consider Loki as well, because Loki was an asshole in the beginning, and it took 10 years to get to him to finally own up his shit and become a good guy. And they're just rare gems in the storytelling where we can dive into such a rich, unique character. Even if they're bad guys right off the start, they have something to dive into, which is why we got the prequels to Star Wars. We got to see Anakin become Vader, and then the full story becoming a complete cycle. So, yeah, the storytelling is just one way of going about it.
And to kind of come back a bit to the whole, the original versus the sequel and which one is better and stuff like that. Another modern one is the original Sonic the Hedgehog movie versus the Sonic 2 movie. And how there is quite a divide among people of which one is better. So, like, for me personally, I actually prefer Sonic 2 to Sonic 1. And the reason why I prefer that is because Sonic 2 feels more like it's a homage to the video game. It tends to focus more on, Sonic, Knuckles, Tails, and Dr. Robotnik / Eggman. And it feels like it's, aiming to be a video game movie. Whereas the first Sonic movie, which, still good, don't get me wrong, aimed more for a kind of a bit of a coming of age for Sonic / buddy movie. And I know that that's been brought up by several people who say that's why they like the first one, is because it was more of a buddy movie, a buddy kind of comedy.
Like a buddy picture.
Yes, like a buddy picture. And then others who like Sonic 2, like for what I just said, is it feels more like it's a video game movie. Whereas the first one is more like a buddy movie that has Sonic in it. So, I mean, that's kind of an interesting thing where it's like, oh, now you've got people who are kind of split down the middle, or at least that's what it seems to be. Because I know I've spoken with some folks and they said, oh, I like Sonic 2 better than Sonic 1. And then other people said, no, I like Sonic 1 over Sonic 2. And like I was talking with some of my friends from college, and it was funny. He liked one of them. He liked Sonic 2, and then his wife in the background's like, "No, Sonic 1's better." You hear him like yelling over the mic. And it's so funny how they have like this little friendly rivalry in their own house, where it's like they're like one over the other.
Those are pretty much good hills to die on. Like a lot of people will always say, what movie's your favorite, and people will always argue like, I'm dying on this hill because this movie's better than the other. How dare you? The sequels are better than the prequels. Just that continuous battle of like things we all love and hate, or things we can agree to disagree on. I would arguably say everyone agrees to disagree because it's a franchise that we just love to just pour our hearts and souls into. They're characters we relate to, and they're just wonderful storytelling with wonderful actors and wonderful people behind it who are just as passionate about this stuff as we are. And it's kind of why we made this topic for today, because we're so passionate about our pop culture, our films, and we are willing to die on these freaking hills for these video games and films and cosplay and pop culture. Like, good God, like how many other hills would you guys die on? Like literally, just spit it out. Just tell the world. Let's hear it.
Okay, well, before we get to my topic, then let's do that really quick.
Oh,
yeah.
No, not yours, Danny. Next.
but that is a good idea. Like other little mini hills that we will die on. Like me, for example, a mini hill I would die on is the way I view how the seasons change or how the seasons should be viewed. I see late November to early March as the time of winter, mid-March through early May as the time of spring, mid-May through mid-August as summer, and then mid-August through mid-November as fall. I know the calendar says June, I think June 21st is the actual first day of summer, but with how the season is, especially in the state of Arizona, it makes more sense for my specific months, how I view them, to be those seasons, especially here in the state of Arizona.
I'm just going to say this, man, to summarize. Arizona just doesn't give a flying fuck.
It's very true.
Screw your daylight savings.
Oh my gosh, yes, that was the one that I was going to say. My hill that I would die on is to hell with daylight savings times. I hate daylight savings times. I hate it because it is just, it's so annoying. Like even at work, and we'll run into this so dang many times where it's like some people will end up getting their clocks wrong, and so they'll either wake up late or they'll wake up too early, or they'll end up missing meetings, and then there's always that awkward emails like, oh, okay, it's this time here, what time is it with you or whatever, or you're having to Google it. And even my phone, this last daylight savings time shift that they had, somehow my phone messed up on that, and I ended up waking up an hour earlier than I needed to, and I was like, gosh, why am I still so sleepy? And I come wandering out into the living room, and I look at the other clocks that are in there, my room, or in my living room, and I'm like, wait, why? And I look at my phone, and it was off by an hour, and I was like, what the heck? Why is my phone messing up of all things? We don't need daylight savings time. Yes, I know the hours, hours of daylight and blah 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 blah. But it's we don't need it anymore. Get rid of it.
Daylight savings time in general just needs to die. That's just all I'm gonna say. But my mini hill I will die on, and I will die on it to this very day, is that Boba Fett is just the most overhyped Star Wars character from the original trilogy, and I will die on that fucking hill no matter what anybody says. 5 lines in the trilogy, and all he says is, ah!
All right, guys, let's get him.
Yeah, I'm saying a lot of Star Wars fans are not going to be happy with you just for the Fett.
I don't care. You know why?
You're a Star Wars fan, bro?
I'm a fan of The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba over the original Boba. That look, that fighting sequence, and the actor, yes, give me that. Original Boba, I have all the praise to the original actor, don't get me wrong. I give him utmost respect, but the way they fucking overhype that character, bullshit.
Now, granted, I feel like the extended universe books, which are now the Legends books, did help establish that character more. But with the current canon, with season 2, episode 6 of The Mandalorian, and then the entirety of the Book of Boba Fett, we got more of what we were imagining that character to be when we were growing up, reading some of those books, or watching the Star Wars Holiday Special with the animated segment that Boba first appeared in. He seemed like that cowboy badass that. He was basically based on that Clint Eastwood character. What was that character? The silent gunman. What was that?
John Wayne?
No, not John Wayne. No, the Clint Eastwood character.
Oh, from Good and the Bad and the Ugly.
Yes, thank you.
He's the man with no name.
The man with no name.
What's his name? The man with no name.
That was his title, The Man with No Name. Boba Fett was very much heavily influenced by that character Clint Eastwood created. And now, with the Book of Boba Fett, no matter what your opinion is, we still finally got a Boba Fett-centered story that we've only ever read about, but now we finally get to see actualized on the small/big screen, however you view it.
I'm just going to say this with Mandalorian. That's great that Mandalorian is a great character and all that, but don't forget, before him, we only had Boba.
Yep.
Yeah.
Never forget. Without Boba
Respect
Fett,
to
guys, there would be no Mando.
It's true.
I guess my other meaning hill I will die on is that Disneyland is better than Disney World.
I would agree with that one.
Even though I haven't been to Disney World yet, the biggest argument is that it's too big to travel through, whereas Disneyland, you could get so much stuff done in one day, and it's just convenient. It's just straight up convenience. Oh, and another hill. Sorry, I'll point out one more.
Many hills for Vinny today.
There's a lot of mini hills I will die on. Cosplaying is overhyped with the...
Says the cosplayer.
Shots fired.
You hang on a minute. All you three do cosplay, and all of you are prop builders and fanatics, and don't even give me that.
We have no idea what he's talking about.
Don't lie on the podcast.
I'm not saying we don't cosplay, but we just don't cosplay to the extent you do.
Well, here's the thing.
We're not those kind of.
Okay, but I will say this, because I have been in that pool of those other cosplayers for over 10 years, I will say that cosplaying has gotten to a point where it's just over exaggerated with the OCD of like, oh, this has to be screen accurate. Like, the screen accurate people need to really get it out of their heads that there is no way you can get a screen accurate costume. It's just going to be done the best way possible. What are you playing?
No. I mean, there comes a level of, screen accurate, and to this person who probably would listen to this part, screen matching.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's all about the hard work and detail. It's all if you
Fair.
could put the hard work and detail, effort, the love, the passion of the franchise, the movie that you loved, and rewatch over and over and over again to the character that you're portraying. And there's some out there to those out there, and you just want to get the fine detail and dedicated to all of you in Arizona in the blazing heat of next month.
Oh, yeah.
Kudos to all of you. That's all I gotta say. But I just want to say with, getting down everything fine in detail, because spoiler alert to everyone out there, we dress up as Ghostbusters and everything. As soon as the younger audiences sees us, it's a suspension of disbelief, and we don't want to kill it for them.
Mm-hmm.
That's the primary reason and all that. Because if I was, looking at say a little person, like a little kid looks up to you and all that, mirror and all that. Imagine if you saw that. You want to be as this is as close as they're going to get to an actual superhero they see in front.
Yeah, no, I can't agree with that. Like, there is a certain for that reason, there is a certain level that we should carry when it comes to character detail and looking like these characters and so forth. But for example, us being Ghostbuster fanatics, there are so many people out there that are prop builders that build a proton pack, but they want every tiny fragment detail from the screen. It's like you're trying to take detail from an old 1980s film that is either there or isn't in existence. And that's why we look up to so much, me and Charles and I look up to Ben Eady, who pretty much took that and stomped on it and said, look, we have 5 different RTVs with different details on it. No matter what you do, they're not going to be screen accurate or matched to the screen. So just go to town and have fun with the props, or costumes, I should say. Just, if you want to make it look phenomenal, go for it. But then just have fun with it and make it fun and entertaining for everybody else.
Exactly. I mean, it's just like you said, with the RTV. I mean, as you look through the film, you'll see that there are several variations of each one. But I think probably, as Joe was talking about, the passion, I think one of the best things is whenever you see a kid who is just getting started into cosplay, and you can tell that they don't have the funds to
They're
make the
overwhelmed,
cosplay. Yes, but they have the passion and they have the creativity, the budding creativity. And like I've seen kids that made proton packs out of cardboard, scraps of plastic, and dollar store lights, and they look frigging amazing because of the passion they put into that.
Right.
And I love seeing that, So even if it's not screen accurate, if somebody put the passion into it, you can tell.
No, I 100% agree. And this also relates to a friend of mine who I've gotten pretty close with on the internet. She created an amazing looking Kara Marshall Dune cosplay. And she's getting close to being 501st approved so she can start doing charity work as Kara Marshall Dune. Like, she looks, not just the costume, but she looks dead on like Kara.
Oh, is that the one that has the little baby Boba Fett?
Yeah.
She does the TikToks.
The little baby Yoda, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So her name is Little Miss Marshall. I'm going to give her a shout out right here. Little Miss Marshall, how you doing?
He likes you.
You shush. But she put so much hard effort into it, and she was being harassed by another Cara Dune cosplayer because her gauntlets and her gloves didn't match what was on the screen, and so this person went out of her way to contact other people to flag her for it so she gets it screen accurate. I'm like, that is such trolling on the highest of levels. Like, if she looks that good, if not only does she look that good, but other members from her state were honoring her as already a pre-existing member, gave her the badge so she had a complete costume, and even Gina Carano herself complimenting on her and saying how much of an inspiration she is. You cannot take that person's like proud, build-ups and what they have accomplished and try to trash it just because you are going to be the freaking troll on somebody else's cosplay for not being screen accurate. And I'm doing the quotations thing. You're going screen accurate. It's just, I hate that.
With any sort of content creation, whether it be TikTok, YouTube, or Twitch, you have to ignore those trolls and get rid of them, like if you can, if like not just ban them outright.
Right.
Because you're gonna deal with that. If you're a content creator long term, that's what you're gonna have to deal with, is those internet trolls, and just have to ignore them or get rid of them as best you can.
It pretty much kills the fun of wanting to cosplay characters in Star Wars, which I think is just absolutely absurd.
Were you just knocking on the 501st?
I'm knocking a little bit, yes, just a little bit,
Look,
not drastically, just a little bit.
We love you guys, just FYI.
No, we do.
Some of you.
I still love you.
Okay, here's everything everyone should know. You're not gonna please everyone.
Yeah, plain and simple.
Yeah. So just make that. It's like also, when you're doing this. Also, another thing, a word of advice: don't get stuck in your own fantasies. That's the number one rule about being, a nerd or, loving geek stuff or being a geek. So there you go.
All right, so I guess it's time for finally my hill that I will die on, my topic. Shut up! My topic that I would like to discuss. Now, I would say this: this is a hill I would die on since I was a kid. I personally believe, yes, Alien is a cool sci-fi monster. The Predator is a really cool, badass sci-fi monster. However, the best sci-fi monster is the current Guinness World Record holder for the longest continuing franchise to date, and that would be Godzilla, King of the Monster. He's the greatest sci-fi monster of all time.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, look, we saw the awesome power of, the legendary movies. I mean, his, with Godzilla, I mean, his library just supersedes, James Bond. James Bond's been around. It's one of those classic, Tinseltown, Hollywood the movie character, cinematic characters. That stood the test of time, and it will change with the times and everything. That's how you're a successful character, successful artist, is that you kind of change with the times, but able to work with it, and they work around with you. That's what Danny was saying truly about Godzilla. It's always going to be there. Even when we're not here on this plane of existence anymore, Godzilla will outlive us.
I mean, if you think about it, his first film was back in 1954. There has been a Godzilla movie, a minimum of one or two in every single decade from then. The 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and 2010s. And now we're starting to creep the 2020s we don't. We did get Godzilla versus Kong, and we're waiting for the next Japanese Godzilla film release, because the last one we got were the trilogy of anime films that came out between it was late 2017 and 2018. But he stands the test of time. He has had at least one film in every decade, whereas like I was saying earlier, the Alien and the Predator, they have been around since the 80s, and they'll have. Oh, that's true. Alien was 79, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, they have been around for a bit, and they are like beloved in pop culture and sci-fi culture, like in that area. But Godzilla stands the test of time. He has been around for in 2 years. He'll have been around for 70 years, and he is still a big pop culture icon nowadays.
Not only a pop culture icon, but I also consider Godzilla to be my cousin.
Don't get me started on that thing.
Okay, well now elaborate.
Okay, so I'm going to elaborate on this, and I take this to my dying grave that Godzilla is my cousin. My uncle, named Richard Westner, if you go back and look at the 2000s Godzilla with Matthew Broderick,
1998, not 2000.
Sorry, that's the year I kind of linked to. I don't know why, but it's okay. So 1998 Godzilla. Thank you for correcting me on this. My uncle Richard Westner was responsible for bringing the head and the babies, like the practical animatronics of Godzilla, to life by doing the paintwork. There's a photo of him and his friend next to Godzilla's head because they were busy at work getting all the little details and making sure the scales looked perfect, that the skin looked perfect. And it is one of those things where Godzilla has touched the stones of every asset of life, where he is the king of the monsters. And yeah, it's just amazing that how we've all grown up with Godzilla in our own unique ways, and will continue to.
Well, yeah. I mean, like for me, I was more later to the Godzilla franchise, but you could say that I kind of got like brought into that world of kaiju through Pacific Rim. That was a movie that I absolutely loved. Giant mechs with fighting against giant kaiju, and they had weight and power, and you could feel it, and it shook the seats, with the subwoofers and everything like that. And that was kind of like my oh hey, you know what, this is actually pretty cool. And then as like Danny and Joe and started like showing me about all the depth, the massive ocean of kaiju and Godzilla films and stuff like that. I mean, a person could go broke trying to get a full collection of this darn stuff. Oh my gosh. So yeah. So, and it's just, and even though like if you look back on like the older ones and like how, I'm gonna say it, there's some cheese.
Yes,
there's some cheese to it.
Yeah,
but it's still enjoyable, and the fact that they've matured it and modernized it and everything like that, and with Godzilla versus Kong, and like now we even have the new Mecha Godzilla, which I personally love that design.
Oh, dude, I love that one so much.
Yeah, and even the little dun dun dun, whenever he looks, it's like that somebody was just like laughing when they put that in there. But yeah, so yeah, it's just it's a world. It's a massive world, and even if you get introduced to it like later, you still can enjoy it because there's so much.
Oh yeah, I think my favorite monster in any horror films or any pop culture films in general that was so simplified is Michael Myers.
Would you consider that a monster, or would you just consider that a supernatural slasher? Because he's not necessarily a monster, but he's very much not just an ordinary man.
A horror boogeyman is what he is.
Yeah. So he's technically like a supernatural monster, if that makes any sense. Like, because he's so simplified. He's just a man in a jumpsuit with a painted pale mask. And anybody that looks at that face instantly knows who he is, which is, I think, is the most unusual thing. Even if you haven't seen the movies, even when I was a kid, I knew who the boogeyman was. I knew that face. And that scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. And now that I'm older, I really do have an admirable appreciation for that kind of simplified monster that just stalks you in the doorways with just with a silhouette of a pale face.
Yeah, like for me, now this one, my particular monster, it's kind of interesting because it's not exactly, I guess, what you would call a franchise monster, but The Thing.
That is, yeah. There's a collective. Oh yeah. I mean, you can. Oh yeah. It is. I mean, in my opinion, the epitome of like practical effects, like majestic, like how they do it. It was just
steroids.
Oh yeah. I mean, it is just absolutely amazing. And here's the thing: is that it's a creature that actually doesn't have like a really definitive shape that we're aware of. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it always was changing and morphing and had different looks about it. But that was a creature that I really enjoyed.
And to really, really credit, John Carpenter for writing and directing that movie, and also Rob Bottin of special effects, who created the monster, just took whatever he can from like dogs, humans, and whatever the hell kind of minds, like all the influences that just dwelled into this creature. Like, what's funny is that in one of the scenes from The Thing is when do you know when the guy has a defibrillator and he starts like trying to resuscitate the guy, and next thing you know, the huge mouth opens and it bites the dude's arms off, and everything. It's like screaming bloody murder and stuff. What's great is when that scene, when they did the whole stretchy effect and like the head kind of plops off before it like has like the little spider legs and everything, it the stuff they used actually, that all the stretchy material that they used was carbapole.
Oh,
Carbapole is this thing that they use for Twinkies. What? To make everything hold together. So people, when you're eating Twinkies, you're basically eating a special effect. Look, Alien is terrifying, yes, in space, and you can't outrun it, obviously. But like, what would win between the two creatures? I would have to say The Thing. Mm-hmm. One little touch on that thing, one little cell, one little molecule, and that thing is on you, and it will replicate you.
It is a supernatural virus, because whatever it attaches itself to, it mutates that host with crazy ass spider leg arms, which to me makes me think, okay, so this thing has been leeching from creature to creature to creature, and whatever it leached on from before, it's carrying that DNA with it and becoming irrationally violent.
Yeah, and when you look at it, this creature, you just tell by how comfortable it is, the way it acts, it survived. That's its primary instinct, is just to survive and all. And like, the ending is so perfect. You have Kurt Russell, who just blew the damn thing in its spaceship in the cave, and like, yeah, well, fuck you too. And so throws a stick of dynamite kablooey. And, he's basically shivering out in the snow, and he's just cold as shit. Then all of a sudden, from the shadows, here comes Keith David, the guy who, voiced Spawn. He was in They Live with Roddy Piper. He was the kind of the priest in Vin Diesel's Pitch Black. He comes up, and he looks okay. But the audience, it gives you... I love how John Carpenter leaves you right at that ending. It doesn't give you a definitive ending, but you could think of all the scenarios that could happen. Either Kurt Russell's the Thing, Keith David's the Thing, who lives, who dies, or they both die. And that's how they kind of just leave it up to the imagination. Perfect.
It leaves you fucked up.
It was ahead of its time, because back then it wasn't really great. I think even the original creator actually hated it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I always forget that it's based off a book.
Basically, I forget who wrote the novel, but the title of it is Who Goes There? And it was, people tend to forget this was actually a remake. So The Thing, it's basically The Thing from another world. And what happens is that with the creature, I'm surprised that even that film was filmed in Alaska. I'm just going to add that in there just because. What I loved about The Thing is it was ahead of its time, but it took time, like the molecule and everything, to make us a part of it, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. I'm talking, symbolically with it. I mean, we could go on forever talking about The Thing. It's just, if you guys haven't seen it, definitely watch it. If you're a dog lover, I am sorry.
No, it is hard to watch.
A shotgun blast to a dog, and you see it. Sorry, oops.
That's not even like the worst part of it.
I mean, that entire movie is just absolutely like it can be sensory overload, but with the amount of work that went into it, the John Carpenter's like the directorial touch to that story, it just makes it such an enjoyable horror film. I mean, yeah, horror film still, but such an enjoyable one. But yeah, gentlemen, I think with that should wrap up this week's episode of Petty Cash Podcast. I thank all my co-hosts and friends, Joe, Charles, and Vinny, for joining me today for the first episode of the Petty Cash Podcast. Next week will be a different host. We will decide amongst ourselves who will be the host for next week, but we hope you tune in next week, whether you watch it through YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to this from. We thank you for listening, turning this on in the background while you're doing chores, doing work, whatever. We appreciate you listening nonetheless. But for now, we thank you for listening. Tune in next week for the next episode of Petty Cash Podcast, and we will see you and you will hear us on the next episode.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Breathe.